May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be always acceptable in your sight, Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Okay. I am only going to say a few things because we are going to be hearing from Valerie, who's going to talk about PWRDF, mission that our church and the diocese and the Anglican Church of Canada is doing throughout the world, and also I think some things about poverty. Is that as well? So, in a lot of ways, this is a perfect gospel for such a day. This is a gospel where Jesus was preoccupied with curing and healing, and he was interrupted and sent away because his ministry and what he was doing was inconvenient politically. It was offensive to the powers and principalities. It was the kind of message that people didn't want to hear, and in a lot of ways, this lamentation that Jesus preaches is out of a deep frustration that he himself must have felt as a passionate guy, and a deep frustration that God felt, a deep frustration with the temple. The image that comes up over and over and over again in the Bible, and it's an image that tends to confound us, is the image of the fig tree. It is the image that Jesus chooses to use to describe the temple, and that image is one of a tree, an old, grizzled tree that's still alive, doing its thing, and has stopped bearing fruit. And now it's just a tree with no more figs, and no more figs are going to come. And Jesus and God gets frustrated with this tree and says, you know what, I don't have any more use for this tree. It was not going to give any more figs. That's the image of the temple. The temple is still alive, it's still doing its thing, but it has ceased to bear fruit. And that is the danger that every church faces, that we might be so self-absorbed and love ourselves so much that we continue to water and nurture a plant that's still alive, but has ceased to bear fruit. And God loses patience with those churches. So in the interest of bearing fruit, we are going to hear about all the fruits that our parish is giving and is called upon to give in our community and in the world.
I'm really honored to speak to you this morning about the challenges of poverty in the world today and the life-affirming work of the Primates Fund. Thank you for this opportunity, Father Jeff. PWRDF, who we are. It's the official development and relief agency of the Anglican Church of Canada. Staff work with 58 church-based and secular partners in 22 countries, including Canada, to respond to humanitarian crises, carry out long-term community development, and engage in education and advocacy. This work is supported financially by Anglicans and other individuals, organizational donors, and the Canadian International Development Agency, known as CEDA. The vision of PWRDF, the Primates World Relief and Development Fund, is a vision of a truly just, healthy, and peaceful world. Our diocesan PWRDF committee has urged parishes across Canada to focus on poverty during this Lent and encourage them to hold educational and fundraising events. You can be pleased. I'm very pleased that our parish council agreed to take up this poverty challenge, and I thank them, and I also thank the outreach committee for all the work that they've done to put together a continental breakfast for you today with the donations going to PWRDF. But today is a chance for us to come together to think about how poverty affects us personally, how it affects those in our churches, our communities, country, and around the world, and how poverty can be addressed by those who let their faith guide them into living with a concern for justice for all. These kinds of discussions have the power to change us individually and to change the world as they lead us to new ways of understanding and to real action. But what is poverty, and what can we do about it? How are we to respond to something that seems so difficult to eradicate? Here are some of the facts that I discovered. The gap between the richest and the poorest is widening. This is true around the world and in Canada. The poorest 40% of the world's population accounts for 5% of global income. The richest 20% accounts for 75% of world income. Census data shows that the richest 20% of Canadians have enjoyed a 16.4% increase in earnings, and the poorest 20% have seen their income drop since 1980. Poverty is complex, and it has been defined as the extent to which an individual does without resources. And the resources that relate to poverty are of four types. They're material, emotional, community, and spiritual. Material poverty involves a lack of food, money, housing, and livelihood. It's a type of poverty that forces people to make tough decisions like buying groceries or paying the rent. There is shame and fear associated with it, and at different times we're all vulnerable. Emotional poverty is a different kind of vulnerability. It can involve isolation, intense emotional suffering, and it can affect anyone, regardless of income. Community poverty involves division, exclusion, and inequality. It's often seen as a lack of cohesion in a community where the idea of caring for our neighbor is not really understood. Spiritual poverty is when human relationships are broken and there's an inability to see God in others and to perceive that God can work through us to bring peace and healing to us and to others. An inability to see that. There are many myths about poverty. For example, it is not true that large numbers of people in Canada spend their lives in poverty. In fact, 1/3 of people living in poverty only do so for 1 year. Nor is it true that getting a job is a sure way out of poverty. Some 40% of people in Canada living in poverty are in a home where one person is working, and 12% are in a home where 2 or more people are working. Many who work with the poor in Canada believe that the lack of affordable housing is the most critical issue facing low-income households in Canada today. When we move outside Canada, those concerned with international development are increasingly concerned about the world's inability to grow sufficient food and the growing number of persons without sufficient money to provide food for their families. PWRDF is responding by identifying food security as the focus for its international programming and education for the next 5 years. Today's food crisis is different from the food emergencies of the past. The rise in food prices threatens the security and well-being of millions of people around the world. Over the last 2 years, 100 million people, 35 million of them being children, have been pushed into extreme poverty and live in hunger. PWRDF works with partners to address these issues in creative ways that give people the power to solve their own problems, build sustainable communities, while honoring and respecting individuals. Oh, I got that one already. Sorry. One of our partners is the Canadian Food Grains Bank, and they are an amazing group. They started over 30 years ago on the prairies, where Canadian farmers wanted to help farmers in other parts of the world. In addition to providing food, it also helps communities develop environmental sustainable agricultural practices, which lead to improved soil fertility, to preserve water, with food to work projects. They teach individuals to grow off-season crops or develop new income-generating skills so that people can cope with future droughts. PWRDF is very pleased to work with the Canadian Food Grains Bank because the funds that we give to them are matched 1 to 4. I have today some postcards that are going to be available during the breakfast, and you're welcome to look at them. It's a social action initiative from the Canadian Food Grains Bank about food security. I ask you, if you wish, to sign them and just leave them with me. We're going to send them in to the Prime Minister and to just let him know of our concern for global hunger and encourage him to develop more policies that are more favorable to feeding everyone. And I would like to show you another example of the good work that PWRDF does. This is an example, I think one of the best examples is the reconstruction that's going on in Haiti after the earthquake of 2010. PWRDF was able to respond immediately with its partner, ACT Alliance, that's all churches together, acting together, and has been working with other partners to rebuild communities which will become more resilient against future disasters. In this picture, we've got Kelty, who is a single mom of 5 children, and she was given through one of the a house, a shelter, and she is very excited about it and said, "Before I had my new house, I felt like a back door, old and broken and hidden from people's eyes. Now I feel like the front door, which is shiny and strong for the world to see." Another project in the corner there is with PWRDF is involved in is helping to ensure that hungry children have enough to eat. It's a school feeding program done in partnership with the Finn Church and the Diocese of Haiti. Alongside the schools, kitchens were built, local people were hired, and 8,000 students are provided with a hot lunch of rice and beans each and every school day. The other picture on the right here is a picture of a parent working on the reconstruction of a school that his child will attend. He's part of a Make Work project that allows parents to work for cash for a month at the site. The next picture is a completed school. PWRDF was involved with it in its completion and raising of funds for it. Not only has it got classrooms, but it's got kitchens and bathrooms, a garden, and even a biogas tank. It's now not only a place of learning, but a place of refuge because it's earthquake and hurricane resistant, they say, and a symbol of community for thousands. Also in Haiti, there are the Urban Agricultural Program, again one that PWRDF supports, is providing vulnerable households with all they need to grow their own food. And for some, that even means growing food on their balconies. Here's another example of PWRDF working with CEDA. PWRDF will contribute $2.7 million over 5 years towards a $10.8 million project that'll focus on maternal health and maternal and child health in 59 villages in Africa. It'll reach about 1.5 million. It will train healthcare professionals and trainers of HIV and AIDS, and also provide 100 bicycle ambulances that will help remote villagers reach clinics and hospitals. And the next one is a picture, another project. This is in Tanzania, and this is with the Diocese of Masai. 21 villages are involved, and the farmers are given seed to grow for the government. They're able to sell the crops to other farmers for next year's planting, but each farmer will have to give 20% of their crop back to the village, which will pass the seed on to neighbors who will grow the crop and then pass on 20% of the seed to new farmers. The number of people who will benefit will triple each year. This is another CEDA grant obtained this year. Each dollar donated to PWRDF for this program is matched by $3 from CEDA, allowing PWRDF to do more for less. With this also comes a responsibility, And it's through donors to meet our commitments to CEDA and these community partners, and that's to raise money from our parishes in Canada. When we engage in issues related to poverty from a faith perspective, we are working through an equation that has two sides, and I believe two things happen. First of all, we learn about the pressing needs of others, and we're shaken out of our ways of thinking and are moved beyond the materialism that's so much part of our life here in the suburbs of one of the wealthiest societies anywhere. This is a spiritual process that can add depth and meaning to all our lives. Then we're moved to respond to the needs of those affected by poverty, whether it be material, emotional, community, or spiritual. Our individual actions may not abolish poverty in a global sense, but when our individual actions touch the life of just one other individual, we are, I am sure, doing the work our Lord wanted us here on earth to do. One of the most powerful parables in the Gospel is that of the Good Samaritan. One compassionate individual bound up the wounds of one victim of a violent world. Binding wounds is a key part of the exercise, but we also need prophetic voices in the community that ask hard questions. Why is the road unsafe? Why is the road unsafe? Why is it infested with thieves? What do we need to do to correct the many hazards that exist for all of us out there? PWRDF is our Anglican response to all these concerns. It is committed to working to address the underlying causes of poverty in its many guises. This is life-affirming work for all of us who, at different times, are involved in many different ways on both sides of the poverty question. Jesus assures us that the poor will always be with us. He told us that when we helped one of those on the margins of society, we are helping him. And he also assures us that it is more blessed to give than to receive. Thank you.